Hello everyone, this is All Singing again, and I'm here with the story called Dogscape. It's one of my personal favorite creepypasta, and I'm going to be reading it for you. If you're wondering about the webcam, this is to create some kind of a lazy justification for certain pauses, and the fact that I'm going to be pausing. Oh, this is the mug I told Third about. If you guys see that video, this is it. My mom got this for me. It's perfect for me. Uh, what was it? English breakfast? What was the name of it? I can't remember the name. It's something breakfasty. Wonderful. Let me turn that off just in case it turns on. And here we go. And if I flub up, again, I'm trying my best here. Log 1. I awaken. I don't know it at the moment, but this day marks my 4th straight year of existing in the Dogscape. I push myself up from the carpet of writhing, twitching dog flesh beneath me and rise to my feet, stretching in the morning sun. It took me a while to learn to balance on the layer of solid dog that now blankets every inch of the solid ground. But nowadays I can walk and run just as easily and fast as I ever could on soil or concrete, perhaps faster. This was a city once, I think, though which one I can't remember. I only owe my guess to the massive pillars of dogs jutting into the sky, perhaps ancient buildings now completely filled and overgrown by canine biomatter. I climbed one once, sinking my fingers and toes into the dog wall to gain purchase, and after hours and hours of climbing was rewarded with an incredible vista, fur and eyes, panting tongues and wagging tails, hugging the contours of the once barren land and stretching in a single iomebic aomatic mass further than the eye can see. Excuse me, I'm not familiar with that word. Now I don't do that though. I merely go about my day. I hike to the gardens where the dog plants sprout up in bizarre shapes from the floor of the dogscape and reach up to pluck the fetal puppy fruits right off the wagging energetic branches. I bite into the succulent flesh, the juices dribbling down my chin and dripping down to be reabsorbed by the ground flesh, and revel in the savory taste. I'm thirsty, so I range until I find one of the mother mounds, and there I suckle the teat patch until I've had my fill of milk. Sometimes I see other humans around me, as well adapted to the dogscape as I am, but I barely acknowledge them, say nothing. After all, what, after all, is there to say? The world is different now. What meaning would our old words have? Free-ranging dogs are becoming rarer and rarer to see now, and those I do see seem as lost, as passive as I am. They too graze on the dog plants, step carefully over the undulating, bleeding dog floor, dimly acknowledge myself and one another. In the distant sky and on the far horizon, I sometimes see massive forms sail or crawl or undulate, and I wonder if in this new world normal, singular, obligatory dogs have become just as obsolete as I am. Let me try to get something to drink. Log 2. I dug down once, down beneath the dogs. Beneath the hair and the ears and the barking. It was hard, and it took a lot of planning. I had to destroy one of the dog trees with my hands, rip out the twisted yards-long communal spines that served them as branches, and lash them together with tendons and skin. But soon I had tools, pitchforks, spears, shovels. I picked a spot where the dog form seemed shallower and set to work. Blood spurted when my spear broke the surface. And it didn't stop for hours and hours and hours. I was drenched in gore and viscera, covered in flecks of bone and meat and brain. But I learned to ignore the sickening squelching sounds, ward off the smell, and just keep going deeper and deeper, spearing into and levering out dogs of stranger and stranger size and build, dogs with two heads, dogs with human hands, dogs with writhing tentacles where their back legs should be. Eventually I came to the end of the dogs, or perhaps the beginning of whatever lies beyond dogs, an expanse of multicolored patchwork fur that extended as far as I could dig in any direction. I could pierce it with great difficulty, but it barely bled, and try as I might, I could only barely peel the skin away, revealing a layer of stridal grayish muscle beneath. It started to tremble as I watched, shaking the very dog matter around me, and I realized that the dogscape was beginning to regenerate itself, close in over me, seal me in. So I fled, climbing up back into the light. Log 3. Steam trickled warmly past the leathery edges of the puppy mouth stream. The saliva waters churned as they flowed from the bed of the stream, lined with overlapping tongues of eager greeting puppies. To feel a rock on shore is to find sharp milk teeth of weaned dogs cast into the tufts of mange weeds growing up into spits and bank. The head of the stream is split by a single mound of golden fur, like an upholstered boulder set with a large golden eye that swerves to see its passing visitors. The waters will bubble and froth should the eye meet you, the tongues lapping nervous, loving greetings with gurgled yips. Log 4. The Dogscape. That's what we call it. Humans that banded together, I mean. We sit around campfires and cook the whelps we collect from the dog trees. The only flammable material we have is the acrid fur that grows everywhere. It offends all senses, but soon the meal is prepared. The only food sources are the dog trees and the mother bounds, some foolish enough to dig for meat. Though the reward is great, many don't come back, for the dog flesh regrows above them, trapping them inside the moist ground. Primitive tools are forged from bones and leather, such as shovels, knives, and clothes. I have lived here for as long as I can remember. There are faint shimmers of time before the dog flesh, but what use is dwelling on the past when it cannot fill our stomachs in the present? I am the tribe scribe. My name is Doc. We used to have a real name, but it escapes my memory. I recall all our findings and knowledge into my leather pages, using dog blood as ink. There were times when there were more of us. The tribe started with as many as 60 people. Now our numbers are as few as 20. Our leader is Keith. He instructs us to find food, build shelter, and bring fire. He abuses his power, taking 5 wives and eating more than his share of food, but those who speak against him meet death in the night. It is hellish, but there is no other choice. Without guidance we will die out here, so we must remain under his leadership. There are times when there were more of us. It has been 2 days since my last writing. I am lucky that Keith cannot read, for if he had seen my statements about him, I would be dead. Yesterday, one of our tribe's members was accidentally stepping into one of the open dog mouths. His screams of pain as it chewed forced me to crush his skull with a shovel, killing him instantly. That bastard Keith claimed Cot's food as his own. I can sense the others beginning to tire of Keith's position. Nobody spoke a word at that nice feast. I will not sleep well tonight, hearing Cot's screams in my nightmares. I fear for my life. Feck was killed in front of us by Keith today. He refused to continue digging for meat, so the monster beat him to death with his bare hands as a sign that he would not tolerate refusal to work. I cannot stand for this much longer. Feck was not even an adult. He could not have been more than 17 human years. This brings our numbers down to 18. There is Keith, his 5 wives, me, and the remaining 11 diggers and gatherers. The others whisper to me in secret that I should be the leader instead. I guess they think I have all the answers because I am the scribe. Only time will tell. I awoken at the crack of dawn by one of the diggers, Gar specifically. He told me that tonight would be the night. The others had a plan. They want me to announce that I am the new leader during the feast. When he is distracted by rage, they intend to kill him from behind. I tell Gar that I accept this plan and will assist him tonight. What had I gotten myself into? Damn them all. I told Keith I planned to replace him. He arose, filled with rage. I waited for the blow to strike him. It never hit Keith. Instead, it hit me. Gar was a spy all along. They dragged me away from the gardens and tied me to a barren dog tree. He said a quick death would not befit me, and I will waste away until I am under the deathly sun, and I can just barely reach my journal from here. I suppose this is the end of me. When the sun was highest in the sky, the heat became unbearable. I saw figures on the horizon. They were not human. They were the hounds that came to eat what the humans leave behind. I thought they were going to eat me. Instead, they went for the blood-soaked meat tropes that held me in place. I was free. I kneeled down to the hounds and looked deep in its eyes. I told them I knew where they could fill their bellies to the brim. It barked once in what I assumed was confirmation. I stood up, and we set off to the feast. We reached the settlement. And amidst their feast I approached, death in my gaze. Keith was shocked and angry. The diggers and gatherers were quick to his defense. I guess he bribed them. I whistled, and the howls sleeked through the fur to my side. We were struck like a lightning bolt. My fist smashed into Keith's face just as my hounds pounced upon his nearest guards. Though I was physically weak, I was quite fast. I stole a shovel and quickly buried it into Keith's bloat while he was disoriented. The smell was sickening, as I expected from a man like him. The hounds made quick work of the rest. I helped, of course. None were spared. I made sure I had my vengeance upon Gar. The hounds were quite full by the end. I took my time and buried each corpse, or what was left of them. I leave this book upon their graves in the hope that someone who can understand it finds it. If you do, take heed of these words. The Dogscape knows all, and it is strict but fair. She provides justice where justice is due. Provides justice where justice is due. Poor reading. I should have put some music on in the background. I had a dog right after the Dogscape happened. His name was Carl. He always followed me around. When I was almost dead from starving, he got me dog fruits. When I was dying of thirst, he held milk in his mouth and got it to me. One day his foot got caught in the mouth and I couldn't get him out, so I watched it swallow him. A few years later, when I walked back, Carl was right there, but he was stretched out, and when I went to pet him, except it wasn't him and he bit me and wouldn't let go. I wonder if people can be part of the Dogscape too. I miss Carl. Book 6. All is one in the new truth. The dog mother is vast beyond imagining, and requires many to be kept comfortable and clean. We chosen do not go unrewarded, however. In her vast wisdom, the matriarch gives us all we need. We sup from her vast teat, a hearty meal unlike any other. It revigorates and nourishes us custodians? And gives us more than we ever could have wished. The time soon approaches, though, to find new workers. The metamorphosis is upon many of us, and soon we will join the glory of the dog mound. We are so different from the others, as they shuffle down among the fertile leaves. Many of us have a thick coat already, and old Lawrence has already begun to walk on all fours. Soon we will shed our mortal selves and be a part of the dog mother. Our mother. Lock 7. I think we knew the war had been lost the day that the general committed suicide. The masses of flesh and fur against the spread like waves across cities. We found out that whatever it was drinking the oceans and eating everything it came across. Airstrikes, tanks, bombs, and it only slowed it down. We were living on borrowed time. It was unstoppable. I don't think it was until later that we noticed that all the dogs were gone. Then at night, the howling. It was just too much. The former soldier's face streamed with involuntary tears as he remembered the events. He sat there, wallowing in his own emotions, telling his story to a skeleton he found. My unit completely wiped out. I saw those tentacles and those mouths. They tore him to shreds. I ran away, even when they called for help. It's all your fault! The dog tree shifted slightly, its many eyes growing around the directed gaze towards the psychopathic man. You ruined everything! You killed my friends, my family, goddamn everyone! He ran and stabbed one of the dogs with a bone fragment. A howling noise emerged, and a nearby dog tree swatted him several yards. He broke a few ribs when he hit the ground. He coughed a bit of blood, but got back up and charged again. This time he ran towards one of the open mouths and kicked several of its teeth out. It bit his foot in response, costing him a toe or two. He was so full of adrenaline that he was incapable of registering any pain. He beat and tore and bit into the flesh with his bare hands until he was knee-deep in blood and gore. One of the tubes he tore spilled some digestive fluid all over him. It burned, but he had to go on. He dug and dug with his bare hands till the ground started to close above him. He kept digging until he found them, the heart and the brain. He laughed at his fortune, finding both of them so close to each other. He jammed his hands deep in the gray matter, disturbing the contents and slowly losing oxygen in a tunnel of meat. He gasped and clawed at the heart, tearing out the place. He collapsed and blacked out. He awoke to the many tentacles burying themselves into his body. One hit his spinal cord, one fused to his brainstem. A flood of thought hit him at once. He suddenly became one with the Dogscape. More tentacles connected themselves to his vital organs, and he became assimilated. He saw through every eye in the lands. He felt every single nerve on the planet. The healing factor continued tearing him apart, and adding new pathways and connections. It wasn't long until he was permanently consumed. His memory faded away as his brain reorganized into replacing the one he had just destroyed. Log 8. It's been 3 years and 2 weeks since I met another human being. I know because I've cut a small notch in my left leg for every day, one in my left arm for every week, one on my right arm for every year. Admittedly, it's not the most effective way of keeping track of time, but when I got started, I figured I'd be dead, or this would be over before it really mattered. Like I said, I haven't met any other people for a while, but I figured I would write this anyway, just in case as a warning to others that might be out there. I ran into something terrible today. Well, the whole Dogscape is terrible, but I mean more terrible. I think even among Dogscape, it's some sort of crazy abomination, since the feral dogs and the ground mouse didn't seem too fond of it either. And all that screaming is not something I ever hope to hear again. But that's not the beginning. I'm so sorry about this. The blood I'm using doesn't really come off the paper, and I can't waste any by throwing it away, and not even thinking about talking to other people. And not even thinking about talking to other people for years has made me sort of bad at thinking in a straight line. But I'll try. Let me start over from the beginning. Today started normally. It was my weekly gathering day, so I left my tent. By the way, I left my tent at the foot of the pillar of dogs in the direction of the setting sun if you want it, but you probably won't because the skin has probably gone bad by now. To collect dog fruits, I would need for the week and fill a bag or two of milk. But when I got to the place where there should have been teats, there was just a bloody mess where someone had dug deep into the flesh of the Dogscape. I didn't really think much of it at first, just that I would need to go looking for a new source of milk. Then I saw it. I thought it was another person at first. If I had stopped to really look first, I wouldn't have had any problems, and I wouldn't be writing this right now, I guess. I started shouting to get its attention. And I did get its attention because it turned to me. And then I realized that I had made a huge mistake. Thinking back, the really long arms and the twisty body probably should have been my first clue. But I didn't really see that anything was wrong until it turned towards me and I saw what I thought was just a head was just a featureless lump of flesh. Its arms unfolded outwards, each arm ending in two canine legs, and the human face on its chest opened its mouth and started screaming. I figured it was bad news, and I made a mad dash for the nearest pillar of dogs, but it kept running after me, and it was much faster. Somehow I managed to make it, and I started scrambling up to climb out of its reach. I didn't get very far before there was a sharp pain in my leg, and I looked down to see that it had bit me one of the many canine mouths along the arm things. I screamed and it pulled me down, but that didn't do much. And I probably would have died right there if it wasn't for what happened next. Out of nowhere, a mouth I didn't even seen when I started climbing the dog pillar bit down on it, and one of the ground, and then one of the in the ground, and they started chewing it at it, but it didn't really seem to hurt it. But it let me go all the same. I ran away as fast as I could, but I could hear it screaming long after it was out of sight. I didn't sleep that night. Just before nightfall tonight, I felt like I had to make sure the Dogscape had killed it and went back to the pillar, but I saw no trace of it. But the notebook I tore this paper from was there, and I took that. Now here I am. I'm not going to stay around here any longer after I finish this, but finding this notebook made me think that maybe there are other people, and if so, maybe I should warn them about things like this. So if you're reading this, good luck. Oh, and I'm also moving in the direction of the rising sun, so if you can read this, you're probably another person. So if you go in that direction, maybe we can meet up and be a little bit better off than we were. Turn that off, it's distracting me. Log 9. Ticks are the only things that seem to like this place. They're everywhere. During the evenings I can see massive clouds of little bastards flitting along the matted surface, making the flesh of Dogscape quiver as they drink their fill. Sometimes canned legs of various size and deformity burst through the surface to scratch them all. It doesn't work. All Dogscape gains are vast scratches from scar marks and which fleas fed upon. Sometimes I rest on the large outgrowth, and only to realize it's a monstrous tick. They latch on to one of the deep arteries of the dark flesh and endlessly leech on the New World's lifeblood. I saw a man once. It was a hot day. I was making my way for a dog pillar when I saw him in the distance. He wasn't moving, and I approached him. I saw why. He was covered in ticks. Not a single spot on him was clear. What little clothes remained on him were stretched over the fuckers. There was no wind, so all you heard was a faint scuttling of tiny legs scratching against ludicrously swelled bodies. He must have heard me, because he opened his mouth and he tried to say something. His voice was raspy, and his mouth was red. But he did manage to say one word. Itch. Log 10. Today is the 5th day of the 12th month of the 654th year. Ours is the final generation. After us, the Dogscape will be all that's left, and all remaining men will either absorb into the mother dog or perish from its swiftly dying world. I have only a vague memory of my mother. Whether she was killed, stolen, or absorbed, I can't really say. Really, no one is quite sure what happened to the women. But slowly but surely, they've disappeared, often vanishing into the night without any warning and leaving no trace. Women are the only thing of value in this world anymore, and the only primary source of the tribe to protect the group's claim to a woman. The primary source of the tribe is to protect the group's claim to a woman, who is used for the benefit of all members. Our tribeswoman was taken several months ago. The first month we mourned her. She may have been a captive in many ways, but many of us could not help but become attached to her. The second, some of the men began engaging in homosexual activities with one another out of desperation. I'm sure I was not the only one who realized that there was little meaning behind our continued companionship, and soon the tribe would disband. The third month she was taken, and it's all falling apart. This is the third month she was taken, and now it's all falling apart. First, the elder was killed over the dispute. It was really just a confirmation that the unity of our tribe no longer existed. No longer had any reason to exist without the tribe's woman. So we began to drift apart. I know what will come next. When tribes dissipate, the members, alone and confused, come to depend on the mother dog for sex. Mother dog for sex in much the same way they do for food, water, and shelter. The mother dog's sex organs dot the landscape like diseased, watering molehills into dog flesh. Men find a sexual organ to claim as their own and spend days thrusting into it. I only initially read parts of Dogscape. Like the first, I think a cut-off part where, I would say talking about the guy's old dog that he misses. That's what I stopped reading because that's all that was posted at the time. So I wasn't expecting this. Let me read that again. Dissipate. Men find a sex organ to claim of their own and spend days thrusting into it. Often they find entrances near dog trees, fucking when they're most desirous and eating the fetuses when they're hungry. They have no reason to ever move from their mound. In this way, men forget the world around them and become obsessed with the mother dog. Not only a mother, but a lover too. It is their everything. It is common to see skeletons, either bare or being picked apart by dogs. Their pelvis is still pressed into the ground, surrounded by still reeking stench of their own filth. Today is the 27th day of the 12th month of the 654th year. As I predicted, the former members of my tribe have slowly but surely fallen into degenerate lives as mound humpers. The desperate scum have forgotten their own humanity. Sickening. I vowed to never fall into that disgusting state, and so I walk this lonely, depraved dogscape searching. It can't end this way. With all of humanity uselessly masturbating itself into extinction, so I continue, knowing that I may end up hopeless and utterly defeated by the dogscape. Today is the second day of the 4th month of the 663rd year. I found a woman, standing as if waiting for me, under a dog tree. Her mouth dyed red with blood from a dog fetus. At one time, I would have puzzled to see a woman standing alone and unafraid, but I haven't come upon a tribe in years, and incredibly rarely does one come across a man who is not mesmerized by the dog mound. I suppose this must be the biggest surprise to her, to have found a man who has not yet become a slave to another dog. In any case, it's not important to take chances, so I grabbed her, forced her down, and fucked her right there. Then I tied her down to the dog tree, the length of dog flesh, so she couldn't run. Today is the 7th day of the 8th month of the 663rd year. My woman is pregnant. I watched over her, protected her from the wild mongrel that still roamed the dogscapes. When a swarm of ticks came, I covered her in hide. I wonder if we were the only ones left on planet who are still human. This is the 5th day of the 1st month of the 664th year. My child was born today. My woman squeezed my hand, breathing hard, pushing. After some time, the child came. A small, healthy female infant. I saw all this. My struggles haven't been in vain. That our race did have a future. I realized that I was crying. I held the child briefly, and then I sat down to reach for my blade to cut the umbilical cord. No sooner as I set the girl down, a furry tendril shot from the dog tree. With a thwack, it wrapped quick around the umbilical cord and gripped it tight. The dog tree sunk down to the ground before me. I hacked into the vine, but it could not be cut. Next I went for the umbilical cord, tearing with all my strength and give her, but the vine melded with it. It converted into the same strong same substance. And so I could only watch its horror as the dog tree disappeared into the mother dog, dragging my woman and daughter with it. I dug after them, ripped into the dog flesh to watch the mutated dogs from the upper layers tear at the child's face. There is no hope for the human race. The Dogscape will not tolerate disloyalty any longer. And so, I commit myself to this dogma, to truly become one with the mother dog. What a damned fool I was for ever thinking I could beat this world. Log 11. Galactic Calendar, Year 100, Day 1. We arrived to the closest star system from our previous home. The world was ravaged by war, and we continued through space as nomads. We've searched for a hospitable world and found this one to be to our liking. We had signals from this planet that date back to at least 700 of its rotation around their star. If they are anything like us, then generations surely have changed here. As we approached, I am puzzled, for the planet appears much different than our records indicate. The planet is a brown color, not blue, and it appears to be alive in its own right. We sent a team down to investigate. Our ship reached orbit around the planet's singular moon. There we gave the crew a final review of the information we knew about the people of this world. Our main source of communication we received was in the form of signals they called television. Our understanding of the language will no doubt appear primitive to the dwellers below. Although personally, I feel something is odd. We lost all communications from this world recently. The captain assumes that it was because they're switching to a higher technology. They also talked about their newest technology, which looked more and more like a race that could enter the spacefaring peoples. That could enter that as other spacefaring people. I am to go down with the rest of the team by the next day of the planet, though I watch the now brown world and feel that something is wrong. Terribly wrong. I don't know how many days it's been since I saw the last human. It's hard for the remaining survivors of Dogscape. Women have all gone, and only a handful of men remain. But as I said, it's been days since I saw the last one. I wandered the furry fields looking for a teat patch when I stumbled across something very horrifying and yet wonderful at the same time. I looked down at what appeared to be a patch of both female and male reproductive organs. I stared, fascinated, as they endlessly paired with each other. I knew I should have looked away, but I couldn't. After a while, watching them breed endlessly, they seemed to stop. It appeared that they finally sensed me. I almost felt bad for interrupting, so I started to walk away, but I felt something grab hold of my leg. I looked down to see a mutated dog paw hold tightly onto my pant leg. I tried to pull my pant leg from its grasp, but it held on. Then, to my horror, It started pulling me to the middle of the patch. I frantically began to fight to get loose, for I knew what it wanted. More dog's paws sprouted from the ground and began pulling it. I knew I didn't stand a chance. I knew that I would be joined with the dog mother in the end, so I silently accepted my fate. At least I would die happy. Log 13. While the archaic tribal worship of the dog mother, in all its visible fleshy glory, is the most common form of religion in barbaric Dogscape, there do exist another mythology. One practiced in distant, isolated pockets, and by a few of its older survivors. The exact details change from tribe to tribe, year to year, but the basics never change. He has a legend of the beginning of the Dogscape, the genesis the genesis of the world we know. It tells of a time where humans were plentiful and walked upon a ground that wasn't alive. Or a demon, perhaps. A dog that lived amongst humans that was accepted, even provided for by a human family. But it was no ordinary dog. This beast lived over 50 years, while canines of the time rarely lasted more than a decade. It was greatly powerful, more in control of its owner family than they were of it. They say that it went out at night, hunted human prey, bringing back large collections of bones as trophies to its home. The humans tried to ignore it, convinced themselves that it wasn't a problem. Soon enough, as the origin dog reached the century of age, it became increasingly powerful and, unlike others, the more strange its appearance and attacks during the day. I don't know why I got that. The vehicles found with deep bite marks through metal, and homes were burrowed into from below. The government of the time, many times more powerful than any chieftain of today, captured the hellhound. They performed experiments, tried to understand where it channeled its energy from. Progress was good. It looked as though even the secret immortality could be gained from this dog. But accidents occur. The betrayer, as they call her, who worked at the government facility, felt sympathy for the god dog. She released him, concurrently all-consuming hell that is the Dogscape. And concurrently. The enraged beast no longer held sympathy for humanity. As it thrashed recklessly through the lab, mutated samples adhered to its flesh like a growing cancer. Soon, what would become Dogscape was spreading like wildfire, its maw gnashing at everything it moved, its hide spreading over soil, stone, and sea. What became of this horrible demon? It varies, but they all come from similar etymological origin, I believe. There are names from all over the world, like Ahmed, Miarm, Aduk. And yet the dog mother is most certainly feminine. Well, it is said that the betrayer was in fact the first human assimilated to the Dogscape. Log 14. It's cold here. Jets of moist breath dot the landscape amid undulating hills. There are no proper dog trees, only short piles of huddling dog limbs. Teats are few and far between, and when I find one, I must work to coax the milk into a skim bladder. I move across the hills, my feet numb through the shoes I have fashioned. I move in the direction that seems easiest, a subtle, mangy slope that I only just noticed was guiding my path in a general downhill fashion. Where there is fur, it is thick and rancid with matted soil. I don't know why the mother does what it does, but all of her fruits have its uses. I hack at the fur clump, separating it from the flesh below. There is only a little blood from a grazed tag. I fold and scrape the waxy fur into the insulating hairy coverings on my body. The dog flesh rumbles beneath me in a more disconcerting way. It has been doing that for the past several weeks, more so the further I travel. It is getting colder. I can hear only the winds now, tearing across the mother. It howls, warbling, mournful. I've stopped. The sharp barks and yips no longer form a background cacophony. I huddled into my coverings. The shoulder ahead. And shoulder ahead, there is no path to follow but forward. The grass feels harder here. The gentle give of the dogland has ceased, giving way to a dull sound absorbing the thud of the matted fur. I slipped yesterday in what seems to be a solid lake of piss. It was not reabsorbing into the mother. My own shivering seems to syncopate with the occasional rumbles of the mother. Her flesh no longer seems like a living being, but I know deep within her blood flows. It is so cold here. I continue forward today. The ground slopes more, and I struggle to keep asleep on the forgiving skidfold. There is no purpose but to move forward now, one foot in front of the other. It has been dark for as long as I can remember. How long will this night last? The air is dry. The land is mostly featureless as I walk. The wind blows clumps of brittle hair past my face and they hurt. A soft pop, a subtle blue flash, and then they blow past me. My hands are deep within my coverings. They are numb, and if I expose them to the war of the shocks, then the cold will take them from me. I have already lost 3 toes. I can no longer feel that foot. I no longer bother to light fathers in the deep crooks where I sleep. But the last I saw of that foot was black and swollen. It felt like it was burning. The travel is slow. I have heard soft tapping sounds, but when I investigate, I find only dog claws moving against the ground. The rumbles continue, and with them now come subtle rending sounds, like a mouth chewing bone. When the sounds intensify, I move faster. I don't know what causes them, but I do not think it is the mother. I have not found any teats in a long time. I am thirsty, and my skin bladder is almost empty. I would kill my own parents for a fresh puppy fetus. That's a sentence I bet none of you are expecting to hear today. I passed a small pile of humans, almost buried in the billowing dried fur. They were dead and desiccated. They looked like they were strong when they lived. I kept moving. There is only the road ahead of me. I do not know where it leads to. The ground shifted beneath my feet, and I pissed in fear. Not a mouth, but a great hard chasm of flesh and bone that had torn open beneath me. A stinking human burst of air bellowed out. Hung a cold cloud around me. On my ass, I peered into the gloomy home that nearly swallowed me. But it was now still, and I sat and contemplated it, breathing heavily, and thought of my empty skin bladders. Slowly I could hear the sound of several dozen feet below me start to play an echo in the cleft. Soft slapping, then a gurgle. I don't know how, but I knew that this was my chance for subsistence. I slid down into the meaty maw. I climbed down a shorn slab of giant ribs, still red and moist, and finally landed on the steaming dark floor of the hole. It writhed beneath my feet. I felt around, not knowing what I was looking for, when my hands fell upon a thumping tube set onto the meat wall. An artery. I grabbed it, pulling its connective plant and bit into it. Blood shot out of the spurts, and I drank my fill. I was covered in viscera. I struggled to feel my skin bladders. The clefts shuddered around me, and I knew I must leave immediately. The walls were starting to hang tendrils of meat, feelers, to heal this damaged canyon. I exhausted myself climbing out, and nearly fell back as I crested the edge of the crack, out into the cold night. The dog flesh slowly mended behind me, and I panted on the hard ground. Before I left it, I considered it. A stretch mark. The mother was growing. The mother was still growing. I am so weak, and it is so cold. My filled bladders of blood are gone. The gray dogscape stretches before me. I must make it to my goal, but I do not know where my goal is. I have walked for what seems like months in the darkness. I have climbed down a huge match of frigid dark flesh. It is a great heap of small dogs, a pile of dog heads and legs, a mound of tails and torsos. It is cold and lifeless. A slow, low creaking can be heard deep within it. I am an ear. I am an ear and lower myself. I grip an ear. I grip an ear and lower myself lower to the bottom of the wall of dog, and my foot lands on something else. I gasp, then get caught in a fit of coughing. I don't know what I am standing on, but it is not the mother. I feel queasy and nauseous. Could it possibly not be the mother? It is frigid and hard, but I scrape at it and bits of dandery coldness come off it. I hold them close to my face, and my breath turns the stuff to water. I try to eat handfuls of it, but it is so cold that it robs me almost all of my remaining energy. Moisture tickles my throat. It is good. I look behind me at the dog wall, with its frozen bones and happy-looking faces. Then ahead of me I look at the featureless dark. I am too far gone to turn back now. I continue walking for hours, then sleep. Then I walk more. My footsteps are leaden. Finally, ahead of me, I see a light. I make my way towards it slowly, over the course of several hours. It is a beacon to me now, a bright, glowing, steady fire. As I approach it, I see the guiding light stands on a pole before a series of low, dark structures. They are like a solid walls of bone, but not. They are not dog flesh. The billowing hair and the cold, dandering water against the sides. I know this is what I was destined for. At one end, near the light, is a dark panel set onto the wall. On it are markings placed on by some person's hand, but I do not know what they say. S1, AIS1, and entrance. I shoulder against the panel, but it barely shudders. I try again and again. I am renewed with purpose by the discovery of this place, but I am weak by my travel. I lean back towards the panel and slide down it, exhausted. My back catches against a low bar onto the panel, pushes it down, then it clicks. The panel gives way and I fall into the darkness within. I am in a small, dark, dry cave. It is alien to me. The wind blows debris and fur into the room with me. I look around. Strange dark masses seem to leer at me. There are soft white skins hanging on the wall, and more of the usual markings anywhere. Procedureless, and keep close, and warning, and wear radio at all times. A bright red cylinder and yellow stripes inside a small box. I reach for it, but my hands scramble against a clear covering across the entrance of the box. I look at my hands now. They are purple. I cannot feel them anymore. Another panel on the opposite wall, like the one I had opened. I move towards it feebly. I am so cold. I pull on the handle set onto the panel, but it does not move. A red light flashes above it. I pull harder, but it does not move. I pull again, jumping and lose my balance. I lurch onto the ground. I smack my head with a dull thud. The cold wind is blowing directly from the opening behind me. I scrape across the hard panel, but it does not move. More markings adorn it. Close outer door first. I do not understand them. I sit there against the panel. My vision is blurry, and the trickle of my own blood seeps across. I go to sleep here, leaning against the dark doorway. I sleep, and I do not wake up. Epilogue. My name is Charles Montel of Arctic Ice Station 1. The abomination is not here. It is too cold. Tyr and I are the last survivors. We are 14 nautical miles south of the North Pole, directly north of Vancouver. Triangulate our position based on the radio signal. This message will repeat in 5 minutes. The radio broadcast of the message that again. The radio broadcast again, as it did thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of times. A cold, dead, desiccated body sat in the middle of the radio systems in a chair. At his feet lay the curled, dead body of a mutt. Huh. That was Dogscape. You know, sip of my tea. I'm sorry if I when I basically meandered around and started a lot. I'm not very skilled. I'm trying to grow affinity for reading, so I apologize for that. All in all, because again, I've read the first few bits of it. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I can say right now, having read the whole thing, essentially, I can basically solidifying it as my place one of my favorite creepypasta. Not just creepypasta, but my favorite short stories. And it sounds odd, but stories like this kind of take me back to like early era science fiction horror type books, because the thing about early science fiction is that it takes a premise and they usually take it completely seriously, and it treats it with a significant amount of weight and seriousness. I repeated myself. It basically treats it with a heavy layer of significance. Like that one bit about like the a god dog like potentially being named Marm and a Duke. That's a one-off moment. It didn't take me from the story. In fact, if anything, it kind of engaged, because you can imagine them swapping tales and kind of getting certain things mixed up, and you know what I mean. It's hard. Like I think say what you want about the guy, but I think he said it best. Mysterious Mr. Enter said it best, that it's easier to explain why a machine is broken than how it's working. This story is going to be hard to explain exactly, for me at least, why this story really succeeds in a lot of the areas it goes for. It succeeds because, despite its admittedly ridiculous premise, again, it treats it with a heavy layer of seriousness without being over the top, not relying too heavily on gore. It relies on gore in the idea where it's novel. It's novel to us because a good majority of us aren't used to seeing or experiencing such things. So people like these people who are essentially, you can tell they're very jaded from certain things. They're trying to get by day to day, which we can all relate to, and that's a factor that immediately helps us identify with them and kind of put ourselves in their shoes. The premise itself, while again flawed, not flawed, I mean, again absurd. Really take the whole thing about dogs or references to that and just replace it with some kind of innocuous animal of some kind, like a false fake made up animal. I honestly think you take something away from this. Like the whole point of this like thing that really sinks it home is just how absurd, and yet like this is coming off of someone people trying to recount how essentially things are going on from their perspective, and it works because of that. It doesn't feel like these people, like the thing about first person horror, when people are relaying a story to you, a lot of mistakes that some people tend to make is that a narrator, while recounting the events of a story that might necessarily have made them personally afraid or personally fearful, they're not going to be concerned with necessarily trying to frighten the reader. They'll try to, if it's a situation where they're trying to warn the reader about something, they'll try to incentivize them to not do something or do something, and that makes sense. I mean, that's different. That's a different case, but everyone even goes overboard with that. This feels like a very clean cut, people just relaying like events that essentially happen to them, and it works there because the more grounded it is in some form of realism, the more we can relate to this. the these people, the reason why they're so nonchalant about the whole thing in regards to, the absurdity of them being dogs. It's been God knows how many years, how many decades, and of course, naturally, they're not gonna they're numb to it at that point. Like it's just another facet of life. What is considered normalcy to us as the reader is considered just some kind of far off mythology in their eyes. I do like I think one of my most interesting bits. Well, I heard about it when I was reading about it, like some reading about it when someone was talking about it, was the alien bits where the people from another world essentially examine our planet. I would like to see where that went off, but whatever. So, what do I? How would I rate this story? I would say that this is one of the better stories to read online. One of the better short stories you can find online. And I know I'm kind of dancing around using the term creepypasta because I don't know. Nowadays, considering what is considered the set standard, it seems like it's belittling its actual content to refer to it as such. It is a creepypasta, but I prefer the term short story because I don't know, in a selective environment, because creepypastas, as anyone saw me on Bad Creepypasta with Jacob Sherwood and Mac Dixon and Toby Mitchell, they like one of the things I pointed out near the end of that was this online creepypasta. Like creepypasta essentially are the equivalent of online urban legends or ghost stories. And the thing about ghost stories and urban legends, they only fit in a certain, like some of them just peter out over time. Some of them just don't work. Some of them just do not age well because you can tell where a lot of the preconceptions behind those urban legends or ghost stories came from initially. Stories like this and Psychosis and Showers, they are ageless. They will age to the end of they will stand the test of time. You'll notice that one of the things that you can do when you write stories like this, it is realistically vague with the timing and setting of this particular story. And when I say by realistically vague, because it is like they have a legitimate reason to not really describe the area around them or describe the setting that took place before this whole incident went down, and that being that it was so long ago that how could we possibly remember it? Some of them were just born into it. I would say that if I had to pick one entry that I think stands out more than anyone, like in terms for me, that really like epitomizes what I think is the better aspect of the story, or the real strength of the story, I would say it was I can't. Let me see. I want to go up just so I can really get a good mark on it. I can tell. You can really tell, but based on at what points. Log 10. Yeah, that was hands down the most striking entry in this whole thing. Just the descriptions of, like, basically this whoever wrote this, I really wish there was a credit. I don't see a credit here. Really paints a very primal and visceral image of the world, and that are, a lot of just characters in this story have kind of been born into. It's just a very gritty, primal, just very morose world. People so bereft of hope, and that they're willing to indulge in hedonism and sacrificing their own humanity while doing so, because it just gives them even the smallest break from what is essentially an overwhelming cascade of misery. And if we were in that situation where we were just perpetually surrounded by hardship and play and stuff like that, we live in a world, we are, so to some degree, but this takes it to what I see as its natural conclusion. And I know some people would frown upon that because I'm not a nihilist by any stretch of the imagination. I am pretty fucking pessimistic, but whatever. But I'm an optimist in some areas. I do think that if you drag someone through the muck enough times, like spend the generations of that, you will see the worst that humanity has to offer. Period. And this silent desperation for them to find something of their own, and then just having it ripped away, the one sign that there was some potential to help regain. Not, you can tell it was less. It seems like it was less for the population of Earth, as he claimed. It was more for himself because he needed that. The character here in Log 10 really needed that one thing to try to give him like incentive to keep going. Over the years, he's probably seen people succumbing to their desires and needs, and essentially sacrifice what little they had of themselves to become one with this creature and finally end their strife. And he's tried to retain what little bit of himself he could, and he's fought for that and clawed for that. And yeah, I know some people will get upset with the whole, him essentially raping a woman. And although, just to be fair with that one, I can, I don't know, I could imagine, like, not being surrounded by humans for God knows how long, and essentially being probably dead and bereft of, like, hope herself. I can see her being desperate as well. Like, it did mention that she was kind of like deadpan and accepting of everything. But I know that's neither here or there. I would have liked to see this story taking place from a female perspective, like a female who is essentially trying to survive this wasteland, but it's kind of like a Lisa situation, like Lisa the Painful RPG, where women are considered a commodity because they're so, like, they're basically gone. So the one woman that the few women that have left are basically fought over, and how that woman essentially thrives in an environment like that. I'm not saying that she had to be uber badass, like clawing everyone out and like being like fucking Guts from Berserk, like Lady Guts from Berserk. I'm saying, like, I would just seen that perspective explored a little bit more. It's not really a complaint, more so just a suggestion more than anything else. But other than that, I think, again, Log 10, my favorite bits. I think it really solidifies everything. Like, reading the rest of the story really solidified why I loved it so much. And if you haven't read this story yourselves, or, well, you probably heard me read it already, but if you got tired of my meandering ass, then you can go read it for yourself. What question is where I would rank, because I have a small list of favorite short stories and in my head. I added Showers to that after Hudo Hoodlum's suggestion. Hudo's suggestion. Sorry, dude. What is the plural version of your name? Not plural, possessive. I read that on a suggestion. I loved it for the strong character. Showers I love for how subversive it was. And this I love because of how clean cut it was. There were no big twists or turns and like what you were probably associated, because it's like modern day mystery. Like we have this kind of idea when it comes to most pieces of cinema, really, that there needs to be some kind of sharp twist that really brings things together. A lot of writers I know kind of do that way. They kind of handle psychological horror that way, and I will say that this is psychological horror on the very large spread scale. And what really makes it work is I think it's the adherence to. I actually lost my train of thought. I was talking about something like psychological horror, and it was an adherence to a very clean, very simple structure. No big twists. There's people relaying what's happening to them. We have a little bit of a twist at the end, although it's something that you could probably come to expect. So, yeah, I thoroughly enjoy this story. It's one of my favorite stories I've read online. It's a great creepypasta. It gives you that good old fashioned just chill. It's one of those things that kind of help you sleep at night. Well, it kind of will probably not keep you up at night. That would be bad. It'll probably just keep you up at night thinking about it. And yeah. So this has been 12 signing out. If you enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe, and all that diatribe. So I'll see you later, and y'all have a wonderful day. And if you want to see more of my disgusting gelatinous frame, then feel free to tell me. Oh, that's my Skype. Ew.